This is JRChadwick. As many of you may know, I was recently fortunate enough to have Dr. Surtees himself comment on 2 of the videos I made about him. And if you are curious as to how Dr. Surtees, or Dr. False Dichotomy, found my little videos, there is a simple explanation. I emailed him. Now, I can understand if some viewers take this as an attention-seeking act in an attempt to gain recognition and increase my amount of subscribers. However, I can assure you that this was not my motive. Don't get me wrong, I do want more subscribers, and I would like my videos to be considered a valued contribution. Seeing such obviously bad arguments like human growth rates favoring a young Earth is a very sad thing to watch. What made it more disturbing is that someone supposedly well-educated could believe such things. I was at first expecting a diploma mill. I figured this guy doesn't seem to know anything about science, so he couldn't have a real degree. But then I checked out his schools and they both turned out to be legitimate campuses. So I emailed the University of Reading, thinking perhaps he lied about his credentials, but no, they were accurate. I was not the least bit shaken in my confidence in the scientific fields he discussed. I knew that there existed a rare scientist who did not accept evolution, but these arguments lacked common sense or even a basic understanding of the fields he discussed. So why did I contact him? During his spiel about comets, he implied that Comet Hale-Bopp had been visible from the Earth recently, so I realized this seminar may have been created in the late 1990s. This gave me hope that over the last decade he had come to realize the major flaws in his argument. Unfortunately, I have a tendency to project my perceptions onto others. So I thought, if I talked to him rationally, he would admit his mistakes. Surely he wouldn't attempt to defend the indefensible. And you know what? I was wrong. Despite his education, talking to him was just like talking to any other creationist. He had 3 general flaws with his arguments. Number 1. False dichotomy fallacy.
There are 2 ways to look at this world. That's called your world view. How do you view this world?
Yeah, shut up, Kent. What is it, about 6.5 years left? See ya in 2015. This is the most evident failing, which is why I have nicknamed him after this fallacy. You cannot prove an idea by simply disproving another theory. For example, I can discuss the Big Bang Theory without ever mentioning how the steady-state theory was disproved. And sneaking in vague, unsubstantiated qualifiers doesn't make it sound any better. Number 2. Lack of proper research.
Which means about half the hydrogen in the sun is now being used up and it's being converted into helium.
As I pointed out, Dr. False Dichotomy speaks on topics he knows little about. There is nothing wrong with being ignorant of a subject, say solar dynamics, but you don't speak on it as if you do understand it. For instance, I know next to nothing about Adobe brick house building. I would not dare attempt to instruct others on this skill, lest I become surrounded by a group of angry people covered in straw and cow feces. However, if I had the incentive to do so, I could force myself to acquire such knowledge and hone the skill until I felt comfortable enough to teach it to others. Defending himself by accusing me of only correcting his conceptual mistakes instead of his main point is both untrue and superfluous. First off, I did cover why his arguments were meaningless. Second, why should we listen to someone speak on a topic when they cannot even correctly state the fundamental concepts involved? How can we trust anyone with a track record of bizarre assertions and uneducated statements? Let's say one of your coworkers comes to you with the following claims. Aliens have replaced the supervisor with a replica. Our dog is tutoring my son in calculus. And your wife is cheating on you. Now, after hearing all this, how many of you would race home expecting to catch a wife in the midst of an extramarital affair? Not many, I would suspect. Number 3. Nirvana fallacy and contradiction. In a nutshell, a Nirvana fallacy is making the leap that there must be a perfect conclusion for an issue. Surtees' points about the human growth rate, helium, ocean salinity, etc. was simply to cast doubt upon the age of the Earth. He of course arrived at these values with faulty assumptions, ignored mountains of evidence, and then invoked a false dichotomy by asserting that he could prove his idea by finding flaws in another. Now, here is the contradiction. He calculates that the oceans have a maximum age of 40 million years. 40 million is about 115 times smaller than the current estimated age of the Earth. If it weren't so stupidly wrong, and if there weren't huge amounts of corroborating evidence contradicting it, it would be a striking inconsistency with all that is currently known. But 40 million years is about 6,667 times larger than his 6,000-year age. When you consider this as a range, he gave a margin of error of negative 666,667%. Not exactly a perfect indication of 6,000 years. There really is no limit for a margin of error in a scientific publication. However, an error like this would need some serious justification. Marc Surtees, Dr. False Dichotomy, you have a scientific degree. In having one, you are expected to join the ranks of those who dedicate their lives to the advancement of civilization. Instead, you went the other way, so really you are not a scientist. Surtees, you bastardize the scientific method. You pollute the minds of the uninformed. And you aspire to halt scientific progress. You make another tired logical fallacy by waving your hand at any new scientific field meant to investigate what is currently unknown. Let's say your son, at the age of 10 months, has not yet mastered walking. Would you conclude that your son cannot develop beyond the infant level and condemn him to a life as an invalid? You are a biologist with no other credentials. How dare you presume that you are of authority to dismiss entire fields of research, especially since your understanding of astronomy is greatly dwarfed by that of a junior college computer major? Why hate the messenger instead of just the message? Because, whether intentional or not, you would have us abandon science in favor of your primitive Dark Age superstitions. I hope someday you will wake up, but right now, you are an utter fool. Thank you for watching. Once again, my name is JRChadwick.